Hi, my name's Alex. I've argued enough for a lifetime. Put your headphones on, sit back, relax, and enjoy your commute or whatever else you're really doing right now. Good night to those of you who use my content to fall asleep. In addition, please share and like or give a thumbs up or do whatever one does on the platform you use to consume content like this. Doing so will help me a lot. Thanks. You know, being a father in science does have its perks. You can be absolutely and utterly nerdy and weird in a good way about things. No holding back, just pure enjoyment and at times awe. This cloverleaf of stories isn't about my son, but it very well could be. He's every bit as awesome as his dad, and then some. Of the two of us, he's the one with at least some, say, relevant filters, is what I'm saying. Anyway, the first one's called Getting Away From It All is Good, Discovering Something New is Even Better. Enjoy. On the way up to Mount Roundtop, or Big Top, or something like that, somewhere up in the north of Norway, I stopped, panting. My son, literally a step behind me, stumbled, as Woodhouse would say, to a perplexed halt. "Why, what?" he said. "We lost our way," I lied. My son raised himself up like a miniature god of vengeance. "Really? Big Top's over there, Dad. I can see it." Okay, son. Take in the landscape, son. You can't just see Big Top, but the whole island from up here." "Almost." "Okay, almost. Isn't it beautiful?" "Well, duh. That's why we took the tour, right?" "All right. Is there any reason your old man may want to stand right here, right now?" My son threw me a glance as if to check whether an eagle had pecked at my cranium. Then he observed the landscape. "Clouds," he said. "Mom says you like clouds." "I do." "I know. What do you think about that fishbone over there?" "Shall we go on, Daddy?" "Look, there's lentils too. Why is that one purple? I've never seen a purple cloud, and it's the only one too. None of the others are purple." I smiled. "Something's wrong with that cloud, Dad." "What do you mean?" "It's purple, Dad." "Yes, but why is that wrong?" He stared at me like I had swallowed a sailfish. "It's purple, Dad." "Yes," I said. "If you think about it, it makes sense too. Look, the sun's over." What was that? My son grinned and did his grown-up voice. "That was a stoat, Dad. You shouldn't just look up all the time, Dad. Watch where you're standing, Dad." "Shut up." We laughed. "There's two things to this," I said. "One is the color of the light that comes in, and the other is what a cloud, or anything really, does to that light. The sun ain't purple, Dad." "No, but violet's in there. All the other clouds are white, so clouds don't do anything to change the color of the light." My son looked at me like I tried to put a mole through the grinder. "What are the colors of the rainbow?" I asked. After a brief, mumbling consideration, he said, but there are things around us which do change the color of the light. What do you think those are?" "I know you, Dad," my son said. "If you ask like that, it's probably right in front of my nose." He started looking around and searching. "The sun doesn't shine green there and brown over there, right? Look, the moss is—" "What is the color of that moss, Dad?" "Silver, probably," I said, sitting down. He sat down beside me, facing the sun. Time for a science talk. There was no chance of going on just right now. Why is grass green, moss silver, and rock gray or brown? We sat and talked and talked. I will spare you all the details, but click on the link below called Cloud Physics. Take a while and explore. It's both simple and complex. In other words, intriguing. "It's getting darker, Dad," he said eventually. "Oh, that's just a cloud, but you're right, we should probably get a move on." "That's not what I meant." "Come on, let's go." "You're the one sitting, Dad." "All right, then." As I stood up, my son started chasing a rabbit. I wish I was kidding, but he went off in the right direction, so there was that. A dialogue about chaos and order and ants. This will be all over the place. Chaotic, you may say. Well, no, not really, only a little, like, I don't know. It's about ants and sand. It is what it is. Speaking of ants, why don't anthills look like that? My nephew asked. He had just built a cone out of dry sand in a kindergarten sandpit. He was 14 at the time. You know, you may have a beach on which to conduct experiments, but he hadn't. Nerd do as nerd do, all right? Hashtag nerdcred. What? Oh, yes, experiment. That's the right word for it too. It was something related to friction and sand, which turned into a few quick observations about chaos and ants. I understand that wet sand's different, he said. But this ain't wet sand, it's dry sand. The only thing I can build with it are cones. That's how do ants keep their hill together anyway? I thought for a moment. I wouldn't know. So instead of answering him, I said, I've seen anthills like this. Yeah, over on the other side of town I remember seeing one that looks like this, he said. Still, it just doesn't stick. I can put sand on top of this pile here, but no matter how slowly I do it, there's always an avalanche at one point, and the thing ends up looking like a cone. Ah, yes, it wouldn't help either to put just one grain after another on top. The avalanche would still come. Math? Yes, I said. He nodded. Then the ants break math. I laughed. That's one way to put it, yes. They do biology, I guess. That's good enough an answer for a physicist. Ha ha, he said, pouring sand until another avalanche hit. What's the math they break? Yeah, that, I began. I'll admit that I started a small lecture. The fact that my teenager nephew listened makes the admission a little easier, but you know, this too was what it was. Yeah, that, I said, is rather intriguing. I talked about 3 dudes in New York who played with sand grains in their lab in the 1980s and found that it was easier to use a computer to calculate what would happen in so-called non-equilibrium systems, quote-unquote. That is, systems which could lead to avalanches, quote-unquote. These are rapid, big changes caused by small changes. Piling up sand leads to such a system, and the 3 dudes became experts at stuff like this. What were they looking for? My nephew asked. They were looking for the moment when things could change, when the avalanche would happen, and whether they could predict it, I said. What a bunch of nerds. Like us? Well, duh, but still. I had to laugh at that too. I bet they managed to predict it and made some weird connection to, I don't know, how an elephant's tusk breaks or something like that, he said. How do you know that? What, did they? Not exactly, but kinda, I said, and they couldn't predict anything. That was the point, really. We found ourselves walking to the car. While we drove over to the other side of town, I told him how this behavior of a system is quite natural. In fact, wherever physics had a say in things, there tended to be sudden happenings of which we understood the reason, but which we couldn't predict. Hey, that car's on its roof, he said, and pointed to the other side of the motorway. Case in point. What? The more cars on the road, the more accidents. The more grains of sand poured, the more likely the avalanche? Yeah, I said, proudly. I dialed back my pride. I hope whoever was in that car is all right, I said. He checked his phone. Police say they are. 2 people. They're a little shocked, but not injured. Good. You were saying? What? Oh, yes. You can put numbers to that sort of thing, you know, and that's helpful for all sorts of things. Predicting accidents? The probability of them, perhaps. He said. Sounds difficult. It is. So what about the ants? Ah, I said. I don't know. Oh, come on. I really don't know. Can't you just look at your phone for a second again? He kept searching all the way to the anthill before he gave up. Can't find anything, he said. But there's a lot of stuff on climate control inside the nest. Sounds awesome. They carry around their young according to where the temperature is best for the kiddies. I stood thinking and looking at the anthill. It didn't really look cone-shaped once you stepped around the little tree stump it piled itself up against. It consisted mostly of pine needles, but not completely. In fact, there were objects of quite different sizes assembled here, even stones. It's probably just friction, I thought, knowing already that it probably wasn't. What do you think? Doing an astronomer's work. Can I look? He asked. Sure, I said and showed him the monitor. That's just a line, he said. Yes, it's gonna update in a minute or 2. Say what? The last time I saw my son glare into emptiness like this was years before when he was younger and his grandmother had given him socks for Christmas again. For some reason he had kept thinking that this year she would show up with the toy tractor / lawnmower he had kept writing on his wish list. As it were, he now stood staring at the monitor, waiting for the line to update. It did so, 2 minutes later, by a fraction which made it look like it continued on the same level. He shrugged and asked, "What's it show, Dad?" "It's the total light intensity captured by the telescope." "Where's the eyepiece?" "There is no eyepiece." "Oh." He looked around. "What's that screen show?" "That's an image of the sky from the webcam above. It looks in the same direction the telescope does." "It's just dots on a black screen." "Stars, yes." "Stars," he said, and let himself slide into my chair. At this point I was drawn into a conversation with Ed, whose year-round reindeer jumper was the stuff of legends among his colleagues, and who shared this watch with me. I saw my son sink into himself like only a teenager can. I went over to him and patted him on the shoulder. "Want to go and see the telescope?" "Okay." "You know, the telescope itself is a wonderful thing. It's large. We must have been two minuscule figures, ants, if you will, wandering under its mirror. There were also lasers whose backscatter was used for what's called adaptive optics." I told him all about it, feeling excitement rush through me as I talked. This was my world, the world of the astronomer, the world of the stars. "Can we go inside?" my son asked. "I'm cold. Can I use the PlayStation?" "Say what?" "I saw a PlayStation in the living room." He was right too. These observation nights could get long. And the whole thing about scientists being grown-up kids, well, there was something to that too. Still, some serious dad vibes kicked in. "You want to go home? It's all right if you do." "No!" "Okay," I said. "It's just that you don't exactly sound like you want to be here." "I want to be here." That was that. Going home meant going to school in the morning after all, and it was well that he stayed. It had cost me some conversational coin to get his teacher to allow him to join me on his day at work, quote unquote. The others would have their day on the morrow, so to speak. I had an idea. "You know," I said, "I think I have an idea." "You think?" "That too, I like to imagine, yes. Come with me." We went back to the observation room where I took up my laptop. "Ed," I said, "has the library been moved to the cloud already?" My colleague swiveled first his white beard and then himself around with a vengeance. "Not everything," he answered. "Why?" "You think you could sneak a peek at it?" I said, pointing at my son. "How much is uploaded?" "At least half. More than he can look at in the next decade, if that's what you mean." "That's that then," I said. I sat my son down at one of the side desks and in front of my laptop. A few clicks later, the image of a galaxy appeared on screen. "Okay," I said, "easy one to start with. What kind of galaxy is this?" "Spiral." "Right. See the bar in the center?" "Yes." "That's a so-called barred spiral galaxy. Click on the button where it says barred spiral." He did so, and the next one appeared. It looked like a cloudy egg. "What's that?" "That's an elliptical galaxy," I said. Without asking, he clicked on the right button. A part of me wanted to stop him in his tracks and talk about where the telescope had seen these galaxies, how big they were, and things like that. I saw him clicking and kept my mouth shut. A little while later, I heard him say this. "Dad, what the is that?" My colleague coughed out a piece of coffee-soaked beard. "Sorry, Ed," I said. "Hey, this looks like a TIE fighter," my son said. "In a galaxy not really all that far away." "The Empire Strikes Back. Both of them." He laughed. Ed looked up, raised the one eyebrow life had bestowed him with, but said nothing. "Seriously though, Dad," my son continued, "how do you categorize that?" "As a collision," I answered. "That's what this is. Those are two galaxies. You're right about that. They're interacting." "Gravitation?" "Yes." "Awesome," he said and clicked the right button.